If you're taking an Alaska cruise that stops in Skagway, you have several great excursion options, but which one is right for you? I've done the Yukon Suspension Bridge excursion, the Scenic Bus Ride, and the White Pass Railway. So in this video, I'm going to compare all three and share the pros and cons of each. Also, I'll give you a few tips that I think are important to know before you book. If you'd like to go deeper in planning your excursions for your Alaska cruise, I created Alaska Cruise Insider Guide. The guide includes top excursion recommendations, including must-do, value, and extreme adventure, and a downloadable seasonal packing list to make sure you pack right without overpacking. I'll put a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. Number 1, give yourself time in Skagway. My first piece of advice is to schedule your excursion as early in the morning as possible. That way you'll have more time afterward to explore Skagway, shop, walk around town, or even fit in another activity. I also recommend choosing an Alaska cruise itinerary that gives you plenty of hours in Skagway. The reason is that some of these excursions are 2 to 3 hours long, and if you want to explore Skagway afterward, those extra hours can make a big difference. So let's compare the three excursions. Number 2, Yukon Suspension Bridge. First is the Yukon Suspension Bridge excursion. This is actually an excursion that takes you quite a bit farther toward Canada than the other two. One thing I think is important to know is that this is a tour bus, not a shuttle bus. That means you're generally traveling pretty quickly up the mountain rather than stopping frequently at scenic viewpoints. You do get some beautiful views along the way though, and one of my favorite parts was reaching the border between Alaska and Canada. And of course, you get to actually walk across the suspension bridge, which I really enjoyed. Just keep in mind that you may only have about an hour at the suspension bridge. My excursion also included a stop at Lyersville for a salmon bake. It was fine, but I wouldn't say the food was a 10 out of 10. And if you're interested in the displays, gift shops, or other things around Lyersville, your excursion may not give you a lot of time for those. This is because it's focused on the salmon bake. You can probably see some of this if you keep an eye on the clock. Number 3, Scenic Bus Ride. Next is the Scenic Bus Ride. I think this excursion is really underrated. In fact, it's one of my favorites. The Scenic Bus Ride takes you through much of the same general area as the White Pass Railway, but here's what I really like about it. You're actually stopping at scenic viewpoints. You'll have opportunities to get out, look around, take pictures, and enjoy the scenery instead of simply just passing by. The pace also felt less hectic to me. It's generally shorter than the Yukon Suspension Bridge excursion or the full White Pass Railway experience. You may have more flexibility to stop if you happen to see something interesting along the way, such as wildlife. Another big advantage is the price. The Scenic Bus Ride can be one of the least expensive excursion options, and depending on your cruise line and any excursion discounts you may have, it may be a particularly good value or free. One stop I really enjoy is the Alaska sign. It's a fun photo opportunity and one of those little moments that makes your Alaska trip feel special. I highly recommend getting a picture there. Overall, I really enjoyed the Scenic Bus Ride. I'd even argue that from a scenery standpoint and from a time advantage, it can be just as good as the White Pass Railway. White Pass Railway. And that brings us to what is probably the most famous excursion in Skagway, the White Pass Railway. If you've been researching Alaska cruises, you've probably seen pictures of this train, and there's a reason it's so popular. One of the biggest benefits is simply the experience of being on this historic railway following the route of the prospectors during the Klondike Gold Rush. You're going through tunnels, crossing bridges, seeing rivers and mountains, and hearing stories about the people who traveled this route. And one of my favorite things about the train is that you can actually get outside the train car. You're allowed to go out into the front or the back platform of your train car where you can take photos and videos and really experience the scenery. I love doing that. The views are incredible. Of course, weather can make a difference, but that's true for all three excursions. I went in July and had very clear conditions, both on the White Pass and on the Scenic Bus Ride, which I did on the same day. On my Yukon Suspension Bridge excursion in early June, there was some fog on the way up, but once we had reached the Alaska and Canada border, it had cleared up. So don't be surprised if you have some fog or changing weather, depending on when you visit. The one downside I found with the White Pass Railway is the length, which is 3 hours. In comparison, the Scenic Bus Ride is about 2 hours. For me, the first hour on the train was a 10 out of 10. The second hour was still a 10 out of 10, but by the last hour, I was ready to get off. I give that last hour about a 5 out of 10, mainly because after you've been looking at the scenery for a while, you start seeing some of the same types of views over and over again. So if you're someone who loves trains and history, you may absolutely love the entire experience. But personally, if you find things a little bit repetitive, the Scenic Bus Ride might be better for you. Number 5, what about combining the bus and train? There are also combination excursions that include a bus ride and the train ride. There will be a few combinations that you can look through for your Alaska cruise. If you're looking at a combination tour, I look carefully at the specific itinerary. Check out how long you'll be on the bus, how long you're on the train. There are also longer train excursions and combination excursions that go further into Canada and can be around 7 hours. Number six, so which one should you choose? Honestly, I think all three are worthwhile. It really comes down to what you want from your day in Skagway. If you want to travel further into Canada and experience the suspension bridge, the Yukon Suspension Bridge is a great choice. If you want beautiful scenery, scenic stops, and a more relaxed experience, and potentially a lower cost excursion, I definitely recommend the Scenic Bus Ride. And if you love history, trains, and the idea of experiencing one of Alaska's most famous attractions, the White Pass Railway is hard to beat. Knowing the pros and cons of each can help you decide which is the best for your Alaska cruise. Number 8, more Alaska cruise planning help. And if you're planning your Alaska cruise and want help choosing excursions in every port, I've created my Alaska Cruise Insider Guide. It also covers free, fun things to do in every port. I've included in the guide a downloadable and printable Alaska Cruise packing list. And if you don't need the full guide and just want the packing list, I'll include that separately in the description as well. If you found this video helpful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who's planning an Alaska cruise. And leave a comment down below and let me know which Skagway excursion will you choose.